Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
When I discovered epoxy resin, I was fascinated by how you could create almost anything with it, and I spent countless hours experimenting with different techniques and designs. One day, I had an idea to make something special for my game master's birthday. We'd been playing Dungeons and Dragons together for years, and I wanted to create a unique gift that combined our shared love for the game. That's when I came up with the concept of a curled up baby dragon inside a 20-sided die, or D20 as we call it, the size of a baseball. When I presented it to my game master, he was overjoyed. He couldn't stop showing it off to everyone at our local game store. Soon people were asking where they could get one for themselves. That's when the store owner approached me with a business proposition. We agreed that he'd sell my creations for $100 each, keeping $10 for himself. I was thrilled. Not only was I doing something I loved, but I was also making some extra money. It felt good to see people appreciate my work and want to buy it. Yesterday I was at the game store, browsing through some new rule books when a woman and her son came in. The boy's eyes lit up when he saw one of my Dragon D20s on display. He tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing excitedly at the shelf. The boy asked his mother if he could have the cool item he saw. The woman picked up the D20, turning it over in her hands. She seemed impressed at first, but then her expression changed when she saw the price tag. She exclaimed at the $100 price tag. She put the D20 back on the shelf and looked around the store, her voice getting louder. She declared that no one would pay such a high price for the item, suggesting that even $50 would be hard to justify. I felt my face grow hot as she continued her rant. I wanted to say something, to defend my work, but I couldn't find the words. The store owner caught my eye and shook his head slightly, silently telling me to let it go. The woman continued her tirade, accusing the store of price gouging and describing the item as tacky. She speculated that it was probably made cheaply in China. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. Each word felt like a personal attack. I had poured hours of work and creativity into each piece, and here she was, dismissing it all without a second thought. Just as I thought I couldn't take any more, the bell above the door chimed. A customer walked in, heading straight for the display of Dragon D20s. The new customer expressed excitement about seeing the items his friend had told him about, commenting on how they looked even better in person. The store owner smiled, walking over to assist. He confirmed that the items were indeed popular and mentioned that each one was handmade and unique. The customer enthusiastically declared he would buy 2 of them. The woman's jaw dropped as she watched the transaction unfold. The store owner couldn't hide his smug grin as he rang up the sale. The store owner stated the total price and asked if the customer wanted gift wrapping. The customer declined, explaining that the purchases were for himself and his wife, as they were both big Dungeons and Dragons fans. As the customer left with his purchases, the store owner turned to the woman, raising an eyebrow. She stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Without another word, she grabbed her son's hand and stormed out of the store. The owner walked over to me, chuckling. He asked if I was okay after witnessing the scene. I nodded, still processing what had just happened. I replied that I was fine, but expressed my amazement at the situation. The store owner reassured me, advising me not to let people like that affect me. He complimented my work and pointed out that many people clearly appreciated it. He patted me on the shoulder and went back to the counter. I realized then that no matter what you do or create, there will always be people who don't understand or appreciate it. When I entered high school, I was always a good student. Not the top of the class, but I did well enough. My parents were supportive, and I had a pretty normal life. That is, until I met her, the English teacher who would make my life a living nightmare. From day one, she had it out for me. I couldn't understand why. I wasn't disruptive, I did my homework, and I participated in class discussions. But for some reason, she seemed to hate me with a passion. At first, it was small things. She'd ignore me when I raised my hand to answer a question. She'd make snide comments about my essays, even though other teachers praised my writing. But as time went on, it got worse. She'd single me out for the smallest infractions. If I so much as sneezed during her class, she'd send me to the principal's office. She'd accuse me of cheating on tests, even though I never did. It got to the point where I dreaded going to her class every day. I tried talking to my parents about it, but they thought I was exaggerating. They kept telling me to just keep my head down and do my work. But it wasn't that simple. Every day was a battle, and I was losing. Then came the day that changed everything. I was sitting in the classroom before her lesson, chatting and laughing with my best friend about a funny video we'd seen. We weren't being loud or disruptive, just two friends sharing a moment. Suddenly, I felt a sharp sting across my face. I looked up in shock to see her standing over me, her hand still raised. She had slapped me. Hard. In confusion and pain, I asked her why she had hit me. She yelled at me, accusing me of disrupting her class with my laughter. When I tried to explain that the class hadn't even started yet, she cut me off, telling me not to talk back and ordering me to leave the classroom immediately. I ran out of the room, tears streaming down my face. This time I knew I had to tell my parents. When I got home that day, I broke down and told them everything. They were furious. My mom immediately called the school and demanded a meeting with the principal. The next day, we all went to the school together. The principal called in the teacher, and that's when things really went off the rails. The principal asked the teacher if it was true that she had struck a student the day before. The teacher admitted to it without hesitation, even saying she'd do it again. She called me a menace who needed to be taught a lesson. My mom demanded to know how the teacher dared to put her hands on her child. The teacher's response was shocking. She told my parents that if they wouldn't do a good job raising me, then she would. Before anyone could react, she lunged at me. She grabbed me by the arm, yanking me away from my mom. Then she started hitting me, right there in the principal's office. Everything after that happened so fast. My dad, a tall and muscular gym trainer, sprang into action. With one powerful slap, he sent the teacher flying. I heard a sickening crunch as his hand connected with her face, and I saw a couple of her teeth skitter across the floor. My mom lost it. She jumped on top of the teacher and started pummeling her, screaming and crying at the same time. My dad had to pull her off while the principal called the police. The next few weeks were a blur of police statements, medical exams, and meetings with lawyers. The school security cameras had caught everything, leaving no doubt about what had happened. The teacher was arrested and later fired from her job. We decided to sue her civilly as well, and the settlement took everything she had. I transferred to a different school. It took some time, but with therapy and support from my family, I started to heal. The teacher was facing criminal charges and had lost her teaching license. She'll never be able to hurt another student again. I've been in the aerospace manufacturing game for over a decade now. Started as a fresh-faced kid right out of trade school, eager to prove myself in the world of precision machinery. Little did I know that eagerness would lead me to become one of the best setup operators in the business. For those who don't know, a setup operator is like the backstage crew of a Broadway show. We're the ones who make sure everything's perfect before the curtain rises. In my case, that meant arriving at the plant at ungodly hours, usually around 3 or 4 in the morning, to get those massive 5-axis mills ready for the day's production. It wasn't just about flipping switches and pressing buttons. Nah, this job required a keen eye and steady hand. I'd spend hours calibrating each machine, making sure the automatic tool changers were loaded correctly, and inspecting every single cutting tool. If something was off by even a hair's width, it could mean scrapping thousands of dollars worth of parts. I took pride in my work, knowing that the parts we made would eventually end up in aircraft soaring through the skies gave me a sense of purpose. Plus, the schedule worked great for me. I'd beat the morning rush, get my work done, and be out by early afternoon. The extra pay for working those odd hours didn't hurt either. But you know how it goes. Good things never last, especially in the corporate world. Our company got bought out and suddenly we had new management breathing down our necks. These guys didn't know the first thing about what we did on the shop floor. All they cared about was spreadsheets and bottom lines. One day, my new boss called me into his office. Let's call him Mr. Suit. He looked at me with those beady little eyes of his and told me they'd noticed I was constantly leaving early and racking up overtime. He said that had to stop, announcing a new policy where everyone works 9 to 5, no exceptions. He insisted I needed to be on the floor ready to go at 9 sharp. I tried to explain that there was a reason for my schedule, but he cut me off. He made it clear he didn't want to hear excuses and that the 9 to 5 schedule would start tomorrow. I attempted to explain the importance of my early morning routine, but it was like talking to a brick wall. Mr. Suit was more concerned about having everyone punch the clock at the same time than actually understanding how our production line worked. Fine, I thought. You want 9 to 5? You got it. The next day I rolled into the parking lot at 8:45, sipping my coffee leisurely. I waited until exactly 9 o'clock before punching in and heading to the floor. The operators were already at their stations, ready to start the day's production. Boy, were they in for a surprise. I walked up to the first machine and hit the emergency stop button. The operator looked at me confused. When he asked what was going on, I explained that the machine hadn't been set up yet and they'd need to wait until it was ready. I moved down the line, shutting down every single machine. Some were confused, others annoyed. But I just kept on walking, cool as a cucumber. Finally, I got to the end of the line and started my usual routine. Calibrating the tool magazine, verifying everything was in spec, the whole 9 yards. Only this time I took my sweet time doing it. About 40 minutes in, I heard the unmistakable sound of expensive shoes stomping towards me. Mr. Suit had arrived, and he looked like he was about to blow a gasket. He demanded to know what was going on and why nothing was running. I looked up from my work, feigning innocence. I greeted him and explained that I was just doing my job, the one I used to do hours before everyone else showed up. I told him it would take another 5 or 6 hours to get everything checked and certified. Mr. Suit yelled that this was unacceptable and ordered me to get the machines running immediately. I calmly refused, explaining that none of the machines were checked and I wouldn't sign off on anything until I was done. I pointed out that anything not certified would be an automatic quality control reject. I laid out his options: run the line and scrap millions in parts, or let me finish and lose a day's production. I also mentioned that I'd need to go back to my old schedule tomorrow. The color drained from Mr. Suit's face as the reality of the situation sunk in. He took off, probably to call his higher-ups and explain why the entire plant was at a standstill. By the end of the day, the operators got a paid day off, I got my old schedule back, and Mr. Suit probably learned not to mess with things he didn't understand. The next day, when I showed up at my usual early hour, there was a memo posted in the break room. It read, "Effective immediately, all department schedules will be determined by operational needs, not arbitrary office hours. Sometimes, you've got to let the machines do the talking." I was hired as a developer, but quickly realized the company was running on outdated systems held together by duct tape and prayer. Being the new kid on the block, I saw an opportunity to shine. I started creating small tools and scripts to automate tedious tasks. Before I knew it, I was the company's unofficial Swiss Army knife. My reputation grew, and soon I was fielding requests from every department. People from different teams would ask me to build report generators or create tools to streamline their data entry. I couldn't say no, partly because I enjoyed the challenge and partly because I knew how much the company needed these solutions. At my peak, I had about 300 applications and scripts running in production. It was a lot to manage, but I took pride in my work. The overtime hours piled up, anywhere from 4 to 10 hours a week, but I didn't mind. I was making a difference, and the extra pay didn't hurt either. Then, about a year in, everything changed. Enter my new boss. Let's call her Karen. She waltzed into our department like she owned the place, full of big ideas and zero understanding of how things actually worked. One day, Karen called me into her office. She told me we needed to talk about my hours. When I asked if there was a problem, she confirmed there was. Karen then informed me that from now on, I would only be working 8 hours a day, not a minute more, with no exceptions. I tried to explain about the systems I maintain and how sometimes things come up that need immediate attention, but Karen didn't care. She just repeated that it would be 8 hours and nothing more, reminding me that I wasn't even a full-time employee, so I had no say in the matter. I was stunned. I tried to explain the nature of my work, but Karen wouldn't budge. So I nodded and left her office, knowing this would blow up in her face sooner rather than later. As luck would have it, disaster struck that very week. It was a regular Thursday afternoon when all hell broke loose. An upstream system changed its data feed, corrupting one of our critical downstream systems. Operations ground to a halt. Karen and her boss hovered over my shoulder as I diagnosed the problem. I quickly found the issue and was about to fix it when I looked at the clock. 4:30 p.m. My new quitting time. Without a word, I locked my computer, stood up, and grabbed my bag. I announced that it was 4:30, my 8 hours were up, and I'd see them tomorrow. Karen's boss asked me what I meant and told me I couldn't leave now because it was critical. I apologized and explained that I was explicitly told not to work beyond 8 hours under any circumstances, with no exceptions. Karen tried to argue that this situation was different, but I reminded her that I was told very clearly that my opinion on this doesn't matter since I'm not a full-time employee. I then said goodnight and left. I walked out, leaving them sputtering behind me. I knew the consequences would be severe. Our overnight backups wouldn't run, leaving a global financial institution without data backups for an entire night. But hey, I was just following orders, right? The next morning I arrived at 7:56 a.m. as usual. Karen's boss was waiting for me at my desk. He ushered me into his office looking like he hadn't slept a wink. He told me that he had decided that moving forward, he would manage my timesheet personally and that I could take as many hours as I needed to get the job done. I ended up leaving about 4 to 5 months after the overtime incident, making sure to train my replacement thoroughly. And as I predicted, the company couldn't sustain itself. Just 2 months after I left, the entire building was laid off. All 200 employees except for 2 people. One of them was the guy I hired to replace me. Someone had to keep all that code running after all. Honestly, the most expensive thing you can do is try to save money in the wrong places. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.